All right, today we are going to be making our pinch pot piggy banks. So at your spots you should have 2 blocks of clay, one large block and one small block. We're not going to need the small block for a while, so you can just put that to the side. So we're going to use your large block, and the first thing I want you to do is we are going to cut this block in half. But instead of, getting out your clay tool and cutting it in half, I'm going to show you a quick, easy way to do that. All you really want to do is take your block in your hand like this, and you're going to kind of pinch it really hard, and you're going to get a nice big mark in your clay, and then kind of go to the other side and pinch it really good again, and then you can just kind of break it in half. So even though it looked like a big hard piece of clay, it's pretty easy to divide in half. Now your pieces don't have to be exact as far as matching it perfectly, but you want them to be about the same size. So if you realize that one of your pieces is really small and one of them is really big, you want to pinch off a little bit of clay and attach it to your smaller piece. So to make the body of our piggy banks, we are going to be taking 2 pinch pots and we're going to be putting them together. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make pinch pots out of our 2 blocks of clay. So to make a pinch pot, you want to start with your clay and you want to kind of squeeze it in your hand. Now a lot of kids tend to go like this, and they will do that forever and ever and ever until they have their round ball. But I've found that if you just kind of squeeze it into your ball first, it works a lot easier and a lot faster. So you just kind of push those parts that kind of stick out until you have a pretty nice ball, and then you want to kind of roll it around in your hands, and you'll have better luck at making a nice ball a lot quicker than the other way. So the first thing you want to do is make your ball. Then you're going to hold the clay in your hand, you're going to put in your thumb, you're going to push it in all the way just like this. Then you're going to pinch your ball of clay. So you want to go, so it looks about like this. You want it to be nice and even. You don't want any really thick spots or really thin spots. So as you're working, you're kind of keeping that in mind. Okay, so now I have my first pinch pot. So I'm going to do the same thing with my second lump of clay. Make it into the ball first. Then I'm going to roll it in my hands. Okay, put in my thumb. Then I'm going to pinch the clay as I go. Now, I have 2 pinch pots here, but remember I said we're going to be joining these together to make the body of our pig. This is not a good join. You can see that this pinch pot is way bigger than this pinch pot. So in order to match them up, I need to come back in here and make it a little bit bigger. As you work, you kind of want to take it every once in a while. It needs to still be a little bit bigger. And measure it up until you think it's about right. Now again, they don't have to match perfectly, but you want them to be a pretty close match. All right, so we're going to be taking these 2 pieces, we're going to be putting them together. Now it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get them to stay unless we make these edges flat. So what I want you to do is to take your pinch pots, and I want you to take them just a couple inches above the table. Not all the way up here. If you do it way up here, you're going to have some problems because it's going to flatten out. Okay, you just want to have it just a little bit above the table, and you're just going to kind of drop it. Pick it up and drop it just a couple of times. Now, I have a nice flat surface right here. So I'm going to put that to the side and do the same thing with this one. Just a couple of times. Okay, now I have 2 flat surfaces, and they're going to go together much easier. Now comes the time that we're going to be joining these 2 pieces. As you all know, when you join 2 pieces of clay, there's always a couple of steps that you want to remember. You want to score the clay, and you want to add slip to the clay. So the first thing is you are going to score the clay. So you might want to come in for a closer look at this. When you're scoring the clay, you want to take your your stick and you want to make little lines in the clay. Now you want your lines to be pretty close together, and I even tend to go back and make little X's. Sometimes I get kids that do this. That is not scoring your clay. You're not making enough little marks in your clay to rough up that edge. So you want to go all the way around, marking up that edge. Okay, so there's one. Now, when I'm joining my two pieces of clay, I don't want to do that on just one of my pots. I want to do it on both, because both of these pieces are going to be coming together. So now, I would like for you to go ahead and score your second pinch pot. You want to go all the way around. Sorry, my dogs are eating their bones. It's a perfect time for them, I guess. I don't know. Okay, here we go. So now it's time to add the slip or the water. That's going to act like the glue. You really don't want to add too much water. You just want to add enough to kind of get into these little lines that you just made. So you just want to dip your finger in your water container just a little bit. If your clay is soaking wet when you're done with this, you've used way too much water. You just want to kind of get it in there so that there's a little bit of water in all of those little areas that you just made. Again, I'm doing this on both pieces of clay, not just on one, but on both pieces. All right. So now I'm going to take these two pieces of clay and I'm going to push them together. Now they're stuck, see? But anytime that you join your two pieces of clay, you want to score and add slip, but you also want to smooth the clay. You want it to look like it was never joined. So when you do this, you just want to take your finger and you want to kind of lightly rub across that area where you've joined those two pieces. If you can see, if you do this enough, you cannot even tell that those two pieces of clay have been joined right there. So I want you to carefully take your finger and go back and forth all the way across your seam. You want to really smooth that seam. If you press too hard in this area, what's going to happen is that your pot is going to collapse. Because remember, this is hollow inside. So we don't want it to collapse, because then there will be nowhere for your money to go. And also then our pot might have some issues in the kiln, but we'll talk about that later. All right, I think I'm pretty much done joining my two pieces. So you really want to that's where you can really take your time and have good craftsmanship. But I really just want to give you guys the basics on how to make this today. All right, I think we're looking pretty good. All right, so now we need to add the slit. The slit is where we are going to be putting our money into our piggy bank. So you're going to use one of these green tools, and what you're going to do is you are going to cut into the clay. Now, you want to be thinking about the fact that you want real money to go in here. So if you make too small of a slit, are you going to be able to fit a quarter in? Probably not. So you kind of want to make sure that you have a nice slit. Now, when you're looking at this, it looks pretty kind of closed off here. But if I take my fingers on either side of my slit, and if I push it open, you can see that it kind of opens up. And that's really important because we really want to make sure that that slit doesn't get closed. Remember I told you that you might have some problems in the kiln. Well, what happens is we're going to leave our clay out to dry for about a week before we put it into the kiln. But once it goes into the kiln, all of the water that maybe is still inside of the clay, it turns to steam when it gets really, really hot. That steam has to escape from your clay. And if you don't have a spot, a hole in your clay for it to escape, what happens is your pot will actually blow up in the kiln. And you don't want that, because you might think that sounds really cool, but it's not so cool when one of your friend's pieces ends up shooting its leg off and it breaks your piece in the kiln because they didn't follow instructions, right? So it sounds cool, but it's really not so cool when people's artwork gets ruined. Okay, so you always want to make sure, as we're working on this, kind of always want to keep this in mind. Is my slot nice and open so that any steam can escape? Because as you work, sometimes it might start to kind of close up like this. So you just take your fingers on either side and kind of push it open so that you know that it's not going to blow up in the kiln. All right, the next step is that we need to make the face for our pig. So the first thing you want to do is you want to take a chunk of the clay, just a little pinch off with your finger, about like this, and you want to make that into a little ball. Just going to kind of roll it, pinch it with your fingers. And then we want to flatten out that little ball, because this is going to be the snout of your pig. So you're going to take that and you're going to kind of squeeze it. Sometimes I put it here on my hand and kind of squeeze it right here. But you want it to be a nice round circle. Okay? So if this is my face of my pig, I'm going to attach it